Hello, welcome back. And be aware, this podcast may be recorded for quality assurance purposes. My name is Jeff with my co-host Alex. It's week 119. Alex, how you feeling?
Ooh, Jeff, they say that acting is both acting and reacting. And this week, I am acting excited to react to this album that we picked. It's a weird one. We'll get into it. But first of all, Jeff, I believe you had some music news, something you talked about off top.
I do have some music news. And for anybody that listens to this podcast quite a bit, I would assume that you also paid some attention to the music news as well. You may have known this was coming. We have disparaged this gentleman many times on this show, and that will not change today, rest assured. Jason Aldean has decided to once again out himself as a backwards piece of garbage. I'll put it very kindly for the censors and for the FCC. He released a song, and I can't remember what the name of it is. I should have pulled it up, but it was basically I think it was called like "Not in My Town" or something like that. But basically saying like you can, yeah, the sentiment I'm sure is just you can keep your big city crime, not in my small town. But he's from, I think somebody said Macon, Georgia, which is, I guess, not a big town like by some standards, I suppose, but it would be the biggest town by 2 times in our home state of Vermont. It is like 100,000 people. And now he lives in Nashville, which is like top 20 metro populations in the country. So not from a small town, not at all, never has been. So how would you know, Jason Aldean? So what's this song really about? Why don't we get into this? Maybe the demographics of folks that tend to live in cities versus in rural areas. Maybe the fact that he filmed this music video in front of a courthouse where there were heinous racial crimes committed against folks. And he may not have said anything explicitly in the song about, certain points of view or specific events or names or anything like that. But there was throughout the whole video, if he wasn't singing in front of that courthouse, there were like live footage news videos of the riots for Black Lives Matter. I assume that's the riots they were taking them from.
Jesus, dude.
Just kind of showing protesters like the worst of it, basically, when things were getting destroyed and people were just really acting up. Just showed those videos. So kind of trying to juxtapose the quiet country life versus that really dangerous city life, because you have those types in cities and they're dangerous folks. And Jason Aldean is, I think he's trying to be subtle, but he's certainly not capable of that. If you see his wardrobe and the outfits that he wears, I mean, just looks like a moron all the time. And then he opens his mouth and proves that fact fully every single time. The song is terrible. It's like the worst bro country you've ever heard. I know you haven't listened to it yet because I think you're just waiting for that one special moment where it's really going to mean something for you. But I can promise you that when you do, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that happens about 5 minutes before I call a certain hotline. If I get to that point in my life, I'll listen to the song. Can I be honest with you? I don't know who the fuck this guy is, Jason Aldean. That's how little he means to me, because I can't tell you a song of his that I've heard. I just know I'm checked out on him and I don't want anything to do with this bozo.
You mentioned that you hadn't ever heard of Jason Aldean, and I don't know how you forget such songs as Moonshine Champagne.
Nope.
And Back Road Brunette.
No, okay. Actually, I might super like this guy now that you say that.
Those weren't real song titles. They might be, actually.
Oh, damn it. I'm like, he's 2 for 2 with the ironically shitty titles. What was the first one you said?
Champagne, or Moonshine Champagne.
Moonshine Champagne. You sold that really well, because like that, again, I get a feeling about Jason Aldean and I'm like, yep, that tracks. Yep, Back Road Brunette absolutely tracks. It's like, did I ever read you that article? It was a guy that went to a doubleheader of Jimmy Buffett and the Eagles, which just shoot me out of a cannon and kill me, just atomize my entire body if I ever get caught in that place. But that was kind of the guy's mentality, so he made up fake song titles. The Jimmy Buffett ones are priceless. Blacked out in the garage, shit-faced on the riding mower. She doesn't care that I drink all day. Cabo blowjob. I mean, they're just, and I'll have to bleep that obviously, but they're the funniest. They're the absolute funniest fake Jimmy Buffett titles that sound completely real. And you've just laid similar knowledge down on me, Jeff. Well done.
Well, I appreciate that. Whoever that person is that wrote that article, I'm glad I feel the same. I don't know if I feel the same way you do about Jimmy Buffett. I like I like some Jimmy Buffett
Oh,
songs. I like some Jimmy Buffett songs. But what's he know about
oh,
photography? Um, Cheeseburger in Paradise is a classic. I don't care who you are. That song rocks. That song rocks. But Jason Aldean wears those like the cowboy hats that are like curled right up on the sides, and they're like kind of frayed and stuff. Like Bret Michaels used to wear the same kind of thing, I think. And he always wears like the denim button-up shirts with the sleeves cut off of it and like the big studded wristband. He's like
oh, so
looks
he's a
like
male stripper.
well, he he's got the body type of a guy that likes 30 or so Budweisers every night.
Even better.
Yeah.
Call that a niche market.
Yeah, he's just human garbage. And there's like 5 songwriters on that new song, and none of which are him. So I think that's basically his entire career. Jason Isbell got into it with people on Twitter today with Jake Owen, who's another garbage country singer, just does bro stuff, whatever. But Jason Isbell was like, I challenge you, Jason Aldean, to prove that you're an artist and write a song. And Jake Owen hopped in there trying to white knight for Jason Aldean. Like, what world are we living in here, man?
Oh,
Like, you
God.
can't sit there and honestly tell me that Jason Aldean he's not even that good a singer. Like, I guess just the persona is what people like. I don't know. It's terrible. It's bad music. I don't know what people are doing listening to that.
And again, I don't know who the hell this freak is, and I don't care to know, but I can promise you this. I am going to have to listen to that shitty song. And I should probably do a live reaction of it. And I should probably put it on youtube.com/C/out on that line. Jeff, I wanted to get a plug in at the beginning this time too, just a quick one for retention's sake. So retain some knowledge of what I'm about to tell you, which is you need to go get subscribed to the YouTube channel. And that YouTube channel is youtube.com/C/out on that line. Like the videos, comment, subscribe, notifications. You know what to do. Algorithm fed.
That was well done. That was, you snuck that in there almost as well as you sneak in those Frank Zappa references.
You know me, baby. I'll always say Frank Zappa at least once in the show.
Well, what do you say we talk about this album by Lonnie Holley called Oh Me, Oh My? And tell me what like brought this one to your attention and was something that you felt like we should do.
Okay. So we were talking about after the Prince episode, which we were like, not to sound lazy, but we were like, it's a gimme and we're on tight turnaround. So let's talk about an album we love. We can speak off the cuff very easily. Get out of here, bug. So after the Prince one, we were like, all right, well, we got to get back on like finding newer albums, what's coming out. And we looked at the release schedule and just like nothing jumped out at us for the next like month. We were just looking and we're like, there's just nothing, there's no spark here. What are we supposed to do? So I thought about it and I'm like, well, fuck it. If nothing big is coming out, you're not obligated to cover something big. So just go find weird stuff and have fun. And, credit where credit is due, Fantano. He'll throw something out there and I'll go, let's see what he thought of this one. And I don't even look at what he has to say. I go to the end and I see what he rated it. And the album we're doing today got a 9.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of took that to the bank. I was like, all right, well, this is like clearly something that is worth looking at. I trust this dude's opinion. And then I saw that it was a 73-year-old man who made this album. And I said, sold.
Mm-hmm.
Immediately sent it to you. So what did you think of Oh Me, Oh My by Lonnie Holley?
I think this album is probably a classic example of I absolutely can see I like enjoyed the artistry of it. I felt like I was in kind of an art exhibit listening to this album. It was the feeling that I got, but I did not, it didn't like spark anything in me, I guess. And not to say that it was a bad experience listening to it, because it wasn't. I think it just, this was one of those ones that just wasn't for me. But I really like the story of like kind of how this all happened. I love the stories that were told like in the song. So it was completely interesting the entire way through. And maybe me going into it thinking I was going to get like an album, like you would normally think of one, that has, not necessarily a linear storyline, but has some ebbs and flows and kind of moves along in a different way. I think this one would be more comparable to like, I don't know if you remember the Sudan archives
Oh
that we
yeah.
did, where there was a lot of almost like spoken word and truly just spoken word or lightly sung parts of it, but it was about storytelling. It was about kind of occupying a space where you were kind of getting led into what brought Lonnie to this point in his life. And there was a lot of things, a lot of very interesting and sad and heartbreaking and triumphant things that, he went through to get to the point where he made this album at 73 years old. So, well, it's probably not going to like hit my main rotation of albums I listen to all the time. It is one that if I feel like somebody's looking for an album like this, it is one I'm going to recommend 100% for people.
And I think you hit it on the head. It is more interesting than it is necessarily, I would say, great or enjoyable. But it is, which sounds like a huge slam on, I'm not beating up on an old man.
Yeah.
For what it is, it crushes it. But it's definitely more of an art installation than it is necessarily like a musical experience. It's the polar opposite of that Jesse Ware album that we covered.
Mm-hmm.
How that was like completely inconsequential thematically. It was just like, girl, you got it. You know, you look good. Get up and
Mm-hmm.
dance. And this album is like the complete opposite of that. It's all like ruminating on these heady themes. You can tell an artist made it.
Mm-hmm.
If I brought this in, I work at an art school. If I brought this in, they would carry me around like Peter Gabriel and be like, "You're the prophet of some kind of new movement." They'd love this kind of thing. Because it's more of a gallery exhibition or a symposium than it is like a listen. But it's a very interesting thing to experience. So to you, what do you think was like what leapt out at you the most? We'll do like compliment sandwich. What leapt out at you the most?
So the storytelling, I mean, just he's so engaging in the way that he would kind of explain these things. And it was definitely, it was like you were at a poetry reading, in the way that things were spoken. And then the lines that needed to be emphasized were repeated. So it's like, hey, I just said this. Do you get it? I'm going to say it again to make sure you get it. And I think that in this situation, that is so important to kind of, when everything is and I'm not saying this is a knock at all, but when everything is like an even keel sonically, there's some things that switch up, but nothing ever gets like super intense musically. It does that with the stories. It does that with what happened to him, and what he went through, what his family went through, what he went through trying to like find his family, and it was something that really sticks with you for a different reason than like Purple Rain sticks with you. And I think making that distinction and kind of understanding that this can't be looked at as like a regular album. This is its own kind of thing. There are things that this can be compared to, but it's not what we normally do on the show. And I think when you go into it with the expectation that it's going to be that, because I had no idea. I saw that there were other, very famous artists on this, Michael Stipe. So I think I gave myself an idea of what this was going to be about. Cause I was like, well, if there are people like that are on this, and Sharon Van Etten or Von Etten, and Bon Iver, Justin Vernon. I mean, it was, there were some heavy hitters musically that came onto this album. And if I didn't tell you which songs they were on, I'm not sure you'd be able to tell. And I think that is good because of what this album is. I think if you look at that as a bad thing with knowing what, I think the goal was fully achieved with this album. I think the idea of what he set out to do was fully realized. At least I hope so. And it seems like it is. You would think that having artists like that is going to lend itself to a certain type of music, but I think this is not like a Gorillaz thing where that album was full of guest stars that he just kind of made their own songs as the
Mm,
Gorillaz. These other artists wanted to participate with this man in what he was doing. And while it wasn't going to be their typical bread and butter sort of performance, it was very important to them to do so. And when you hear these stories and kind of probably how much of an honor it would be to be able to be there, you can understand why this has been looked at as so powerful by so many people. Because I've seen not just Fantano talking about it, like I guess since I kind of looked it up on Twitter and to see what people were saying, I see more and more of that because it's just the algorithm, baby. It just gives you more of what you like to keep you there. And I think a lot of folks are kind of echoing what we're saying here, where it can't be like looked at as the same thing. If you look at it as, a Purple Rain or a Rubber Soul or something like that, it's not going to fulfill those expectations for you. You need to go into this with just knowing that you're going to be told something that at times is going to make you feel very uncomfortable, that people had to go through this, and that very likely people are still going through things very similar to this. It's just it's very sobering, it's grounding, but at the same time very inspirational that even after all that, he's on this album, made this album, and he has people like Michael Stipe, one of the most respected artists of his or like any generation when it comes to music. Bon Iver, I could take him or leave him, but there's a lot of people that really appreciate his songwriting. Like these are in demand folks that have a lot of cultural meaning in their parts of the world and in their kind of parts of the genres. And so it's just, I think the more I talk about it, I guess the more I appreciate what it is more than I was able to realize like while listening to it. I guess talking about it and kind of getting the ideas going makes me realize just kind of how incredible this really is.
and when appreciated as a work of art, because like you said, I think it completely accomplishes what it sets out to do and does so with flying colors. But it is very much it because this is an artist, this is a sculptor, performance artist, conceptual artist we're talking about that made this album. So it tracks, but it's more of a like an exhibition than it is a listen. And I don't mean that as a slam, but that's the only way I can like really describe it. The things that are the most interesting about it are the stories and the delivery. I usually hate spoken word. I
Mhm.
think when it's done poorly, God help us all. But even like good spoken word, the person that I give the pass to is Tom Waits. Just that kind of weird, kind of patty. We were hanging out with a
Mhm.
hooker and that kind of stuff. That I like, but most of the time I don't really care about spoken word. Just doesn't do anything for me. And it did on this album. It was the way that he just found a way to marry this really unique voice that he has. Like his vibrato is wild.
Mhm.
Like he started singing on the first song, testing. It's just like, here we are. And his like vibrato goes off the rails.
Mhm.
So it's interesting the performance he's giving because most of the time when we're listening to an album, they're playing, but not necessarily performing like you'd perform in a performance art piece or in a play or something like that. And this felt like a performance and it felt like a really honest and thorough examination of all this stuff. I can't remember the song, but there's that song about where he basically spent time in a juvenile facility and he
Mhm.
says they beat the curiosity out of me, they beat the creativity out of me. This would have happened to him in the 60s because he's a 73-year-old man.
Mhm.
Like he's able to talk about some really harrowing stuff on here and captivate you while he's doing it. So it's not like, hooray, I hope this makes the Barbie movie soundtrack. It's a bop. It's kind of so much more than that. You're right. As you talk about it and think about it, you start to appreciate it as a piece of art, if not for me, more so than like an album, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. The song that you're talking about is Mount Megs or Mount Meigs. I can't
Mm.
remember exactly how to pronounce that, but I think that was the name of the kind of juvenile like boys school or whatever it was that he was in. And that was the point in the album. I think it's the fifth song. So that's the point in the album where it went from like, oh, these are just some kind of very like reflective moments, and stories and things like that. And then you get to this and the lines like they beat the curiosity out of me. Lines like that. It's not just that, I feel like everybody, I don't know, it's going to be kind of hard to put into the words I'm trying to think of right now, but everybody tries to like think of how bad one certain thing, like they just think of like, you know, slavery and sharecropping and that kind of stuff was bad just in general, and that's kind of as far as people will go into it. But you think about just like the effects that had in the South from the time it ended, even through, and then obviously through the time that he's talking about in Alabama, and the attitudes and the actions of the people there. They were trying to take everything away from anybody that didn't look like them, and including not just physical, not just like material possessions. They were trying to take away their ability to learn. They were trying to take away their ability to be creative. As he says, they were trying to take away their ability to imagine anything better than what they were getting. And I think it's so kind of heavy to listen to something like that and to realize that, I'll never truly fully understand. Like I can hear stories all day long about that, and I'll never truly understand the emotional, physical, mental, spiritual toll that sort of treatment can get you, because I just I just can't imagine knowing that every day you wake up there's just nothing to look forward to but people trying to make your life worse. And I think that's just something that, the more that things like this get put out there and the more that these things get told in the true words and the true nature that they were, the more likely, that's the only thing that kind of prevent this stuff from, or try to fix what's happening and prevent it from happening again, is if we continue to understand that these stories have to get told, these things have to get said, and the specifics might be painful to hear, but those are exactly what's going to make it so that this gets fixed and doesn't happen again. And from that point, there are some really strong moments, I think, musically in this. I think there's some really cool like beats and stuff that come through. Storytelling, I think this is like the peak of everything, but this is what got me interested, and everything else after it was like good enough to keep me very interested. I think when you realized at a certain point that it was going to be like being at an art exhibit and you were going to you had to like sit and just understand and take in what the artist is telling you in its entirety before you kind of fully understand what they're doing, it becomes a totally different experience. And it's not really a whole lot like anything else I have experienced. I'm trying to think of the best way to tell people to listen to this. I think, in a quiet environment, in a calm environment with headphones or on speakers or something where it's like there's not distractions. This is not a background sort of album. This is something, if you are going to listen to it, you should listen to it. You should hear what he's saying. You should listen to what that kind of the music behind it, because that's telling the story as well. It does kind of ebb and flow emotionally with the words. I think it just doesn't do so in a standard sort of way that you're used to music doing. There's not like breakdowns in verse A and verse B and chorus A and chorus B. Like it doesn't work like that. It's something that I think needs to be taken in its entirety. It's like you look at one song, that's one puzzle piece, you're not going to see the whole picture. I think you really need to make sure that you do that. And, if it's something, if this time, if it's learning about the real, like, I guess, history of this country, things like this are going to be what actually teaches people what happened.
And I think so I can tell you the way that I listened to it was I put in the headphones and I just laid on the floor in a dark room. And I know that sounds like something you do with like The Cure, but I just lay on the floor of my bedroom in the dark. It was like a fan going, not loud, and I put on my headphones and I cranked it up. And I think that's the way you have to do it, because I also tried to listen to it in the car the second time, and it's like completely lost to you if you do
Mhm.
that. It's just, it might as well be like just listen to an NPR podcast because you're not interfacing with it the way that you really need to, the way that it's designed to be interacted with. So, yeah, don't go into it expecting like, oh, I found this great new tune to put on my playlist, because all of this needs to be taken in together. It's this like highly emotional epic about, generational trauma and reparenting the inner child. And it's phenomenally successful at being like a moving artistic performance that's got a really important message behind it. So again, just don't go into it expecting Miley Cyrus. Um, I would say for this one, for me, it's a stream it. I don't think I would run right out and buy this one. I don't know when the next time I'll listen to this again will be. Again, because it's not like, oh, here's a single, I'll drop it in a playlist. And again, this does demand an hour of your time, basically. I don't know when I'll revisit it, but I know that I will. So I'm going to say stream it.
I think that's fair. And I'm going to say stream it as well. I will say a caveat to that. If this is getting performed somewhere live, I will buy a ticket to see that. I think
Okay.
I think this is something that if it was to be performed live, I think it's as powerful as it was to listen to it recorded, I think would be even more so live. And I think that would give you a chance, like he would go obviously deeper into some of the storytelling outside of playing the songs. And that's something I would look forward to, because I think I don't want to hear about just I kind of want to hear about the rest of his life too. Not just this part of it. I want to hear about like the successes. I want to hear about recently, like how he got to work with a lot of the artists. I kind of want to hear more of Lonnie Holley's story. I think it seemed if he's able to do something like this, he's got to be an extremely interesting person. And I'd really, yeah, just like to know a little bit more about him.
He's only really been like seriously, legitimately, professionally, however you want to put it, been making music for the last 10 years. I think it was 10 years ago that he put out his first album, like out of nowhere, because he's
Mhm.
an artist by trade. And then he just expanded out into this. And I really appreciated this album, and I appreciate Lonnie Holley because it's an important message, and it's a really fulfilling experience to sit there and get that message. As a musical album, and this is a musical album review show, not the same feeling, but definitely a ride that I think the viewer should take.
Yes, absolutely. And are there is there a place where they can see what we think about other albums and maybe other single songs and other music events and news?
I don't know. Are you referring to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/C// out on that line? Oh, were you referring to that? Because maybe you forgot about it, but I haven't forgotten about it. I eat, sleep, and breathe youtube.com/C// out on that line. And you should too. Be a part of something bigger than yourself. How many times am I going to tell you this? This is bigger than all of us. This isn't me just like making some lame appeal. This is it. This is your moment. And if you don't seize upon this moment, there's no guarantee there's another.
Seize the cart, baby.
Seize the carp with both hands and hold on for dear life. And where do you do that? youtube.com/C// out on that line. Please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave comments. Algorithm fed.
Let us know what you think down below. Until next time.